Hello, this is Mike from Vitreus Art. Now, we get asked a lot about this particular subject, and I thought it was high time that I recorded a little video. We've been in the gallery business for quite a few years now. We've seen and heard most things. We talk to other gallery owners as well. We talk to a lot of artists, and frankly, it's a pleasure dealing with most of the artists that we've had in the gallery, whether we're selling their work or mentoring them or working with them in some other way. It comes up a lot though, how to approach a gallery with a view to asking them to take your work and hopefully being successful selling it. Quite a few things to think about here, and I apologize in advance if some of this advice seems a little bit harsh. There are some realities that we need to have a little think about, and quite a lot of that comes down to getting everything kind of organized and getting your artist business in the right kind of place so that you're ready to talk to galleries seriously and stand a good chance of getting accepted by them and a good chance of selling through them. Now, before we come to that, I just want to say that apologies for the noise, quite a noisy road outside for some reason tonight. It's Saturday evening, don't know why it's quite so noisy. Anyway, before we really get stuck in, I just want to say a couple of things. One is that there are lots of different places to sell your artwork now, and a gallery is not necessarily the only or the first place or the most desirable place that you should be looking to sell your work. That's not to say that you shouldn't be looking to sell in galleries. There are a lot of reasons why selling through galleries, working, building partnerships with galleries is good for artists, but there are a lot of artists who've done very well in the UK without going anywhere near a gallery. There are lots of artists who sell exclusively through galleries, and quite a lot of a mix of artists who sell through a number of channels, and that's the key thing really. These days there are lots of different places you can sell online and physically, and a gallery is not necessarily quite the dominant place that artists should be looking to sell their work these days. And I'm saying that as a gallery owner, so hopefully that gives you the idea that I'm going to give you what I see as straightforward advice rather than too loaded in favour of what the gallery owner really wants. I'm an artist myself, I make things as well, so I feel some of the joy and pain of finding places to sell work and working with potential and actual customers. So firstly, note, I'm not necessarily advocating galleries as the only places you should be selling. And secondly, and this is the subject for another video really, but secondly, I would say that before even thinking about approaching galleries, and I would imagine you'll have to approach quite a few different galleries to find the ones that are best suited to your work. Before thinking about that, I would like you to honestly appraise your work and think about these points. Number one, do you have your organization in place? Do you know which pieces you've got, what they look like when you created them, what they're made of, and what sort of price they need to be selling at? All of these things, that's kind of basic housekeeping really, but it's amazing how many artists aren't really all that good at that, or haven't maybe thought that it's necessary. I can assure you from a gallery side of things and from an artist point of view, it's definitely necessary to organize yourself in a business-like way. Even if really your objective is not to make a living from selling art, but to have it pay its way and to have it fund your ongoing artistic endeavor, it's still really important to be organized and to know what you've got and where it is. And when you start selling through multiple galleries, knowing what you've got and where that stock is and for how long it's been there becomes really, really important. Otherwise you're just going to lose track of what's where and who's got what, and if somebody wants it, where you go to get it, and how long it's been there, and is it time to change the work over, and all that sort of thing. So having said all of those things, before actually approaching galleries, but having decided that a gallery is a good place to go in order to put your work in front of potential customers, there are some other things that I would strongly urge you to get sorted out. Number one is get your online presence ready and looking really good and coherent and positive and displaying your work to its best advantage, and also helping to tell your story of what you do and why you do it and where people can go to see that work. That definitely means having your own website. I know it's quite fashionable to think these days that social media will do everything for you, and that of course you can sell through lots of other art finder type websites, but you really do need to have your place on the internet that is under your control. All of those other places, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn for professional artists, and of course the sites like Etsy and Fotsy and Not on the High Street and Art Finder and all of those kinds of selling art on your behalf type websites. You don't control those, you don't own any of that. You're effectively renting a place on their website. All of the traffic that finds what you do actually belongs to those websites or those social media channels. None of that traffic really belongs to you. You don't benefit from that. So you can spend ages building up over time your profiles on social media and the sales websites. But ultimately, when you cease to be active on those sites, it all goes away. It's like life insurance. You keep paying in and you're not accruing anything at all until you pop your clocks, and I'm hoping that's probably not imminent. The country needs lots of healthy artists right at the moment. So get your place on the internet, your own personal place on the internet. Now again, that's quite a complicated subject, and I think we should probably talk about that in detail, but that's not this video, that's another video. What this video is about is being successful in approaching the right galleries and then developing a successful relationship thereafter. So before you even think about which galleries you should approach, get all that stuff organized, get your online presence looking really good, get your online portfolio looking really good. Now the next question, I'm sorry if this sounds a bit harsh, but I would ask you to think seriously about, is your work consistent and marketable, and does it look to the outside world like a coherent body of work that has been created by somebody who has found their voice? You know, finding the voice, that's that kind of artistic term for, you know, do you know your business? Do you know, have you developed a style that somebody would say, oh yes, I recognize that person's work? That's really important, because a lot of the marketability of your artwork is rooted in those sorts of things. Do you have a coherent body of work that looks like your work, and in fact looks like your best work? Because ultimately, when your artwork is seen online or in a gallery or at an art show or an exhibition of some sort, your work will be seen next to each other piece of your own work, and it will also be seen, especially in a gallery, alongside pieces of artwork by other artists who are perhaps a little bit further on in their art career, and they've already nailed this. They will have a consistent framing style, if it's that kind of work, a consistent style and tone, theme, use of colors, and so on. That's a good measure of how sophisticated and how serious an artist is about their art career. If presently you have a bit of a random jumbled body of work, lots of different themes or different ideas being expressed, that's absolutely fine. No, you know, this is not a question of artistic merit. It's a question of, is your work as a body consistent and marketable, so that a gallery or an art site will take it on and be successful selling it. That's what I'm talking about. One of the reasons that is often overlooked that makes that important is that actually in the world of art, and it's the same in anything else that's a little bit creative, somebody who has already bought something from you is more likely to buy something again from you than somebody who's never encountered you before. Think about the number of times you buy a book, a novel perhaps, a work of fiction, or indeed actually factual books as well, from an author you've already read something from. I'm very much like that. There are some science writers that I follow And any time they introduce a new book, I'm always on that. There are lots of other writers. I mean, Ian Rankin, for example, who writes the Rebus novels. Having sampled, thanks to a friend's recommendation, having sampled a few many years ago, I've bought them all. Every time Ian Rankin launches a new book, I'm buying it. It's the same with lots of authors, actually, and it's the same with lots of people and their buying behaviours. Once somebody's bought a piece of work from you, there's a good chance that they might well buy something else, provided that what else you have to offer them is a bit like what they've already bought. So that's a good reason why a body of consistent and marketable work is an advantage when you're approaching a gallery, but in all sorts of contexts, away from the gallery and online as well. So it's a harsh question, but is your work really consistent and marketable? Most artists who are successful, think about this, you'll know this is true if you think about it. Most successful artists work in series. They build collections of work that have commonalities in them, style or tone or feel or technique or presentation or whatever. There are probably about 500 reasons why that's really good, but I've just given you one, and I can think of lots of others. And the way the work will look on the wall in a gallery, or on the display at an exhibition, or on your website, of course, because you're going to see lots of pieces of work from yours on your website, on other people's websites, on social media. And if all of those pieces of work are jarringly different, they will look different, they feel different, they don't say that's your work, then people are going to find it difficult to see that this is an artist who has developed their own style that is expressing their personality in art. Sorry to go on about it, but it's one of the really important things. And when potential artists come into our gallery here in just north of Towcester in Northampton, the centre of the United Kingdom, one of the first things I want to establish is, are they a serious artist? And one of the real measures of is somebody a serious artist is how well they have understood and acted on this idea of having a consistent and coherent body of work that is marketable, that people will want to see and want to buy. Okay, so let's assume that that's the place you're in. You're organised, you've got your online presence sorted, you're building up your social media following, which is these days pretty important. You've got a track record of sales. Now, that might sound a bit daft to say, okay, so at the early days of your career, okay, you've done some of that businessy stuff, like getting your online presence sorted. Somebody like me, like a gallery owner, will probably want to know if you've got a track record of sales. And I don't mean selling stuff for 10 quid to family members and friends or work colleagues or something like that. I'm talking about selling pieces to people who don't know you. So selling through exhibitions, selling at art shows, selling at open studio events, all of those sorts of things. You might say, well, I'm quite new, I haven't really had time. Well, in that case then, that's something I would strongly recommend you work on, because a gallery, their wall space is quite expensive, and the more upmarket the gallery, the more expensive the wall space is, because of the rent they have to pay and everything else, staff costs, all that stuff that a gallery has to pay. So therefore, when a gallery chooses to put an artist's work on the wall or on the plinths, if it's sculptures or whatever, those pieces of art, they have to pay their way, they have to wash their own hands. So is it realistic to say you're a new artist, you don't know if your work is marketable or not because nobody's bought it yet? Is it realistic to say to me, as a gallery owner, I'm sure it's going to sell, and you'll be bathing in champagne as you have become accustomed to? Well, there's no evidence of that, is there? We need to know that. We need to see how you've done, really. I'm not asking for figures. I want you to know who has bought your work. Not necessarily give me the name, but I want you to know that. And the best way to get to that point is to do exhibitions and open studio events, take part in art groups, all that sort of thing. So before you approach your galleries, get some sort of track record of sales. If for nothing else, it helps you to understand what kind of work that you produce people want to buy. Therefore, you can develop in that style, create more work like that. Or if it's something like switching framing style or presentation style to so that other work is thematically or presentationally similar to the work you've already sold. That's fantastic feedback. One of the things I used to benefit really from in the days before we had permanent premises here is doing some of the big art and craft fairs in the UK, like Living Crafts. You get to talk to customers directly, they're face to face. You get to see, if you're astute, you can track what they're looking at, how long they look at individual different pieces of work, and that's pretty useful feedback for what is engaging, what appeals to people, what perhaps they're not that interested in, that even though you love it, they're not likely to buy. Pretty useful feedback, and I would hope really an artist, when they're approaching a gallery, will have thought all this through. They will have amassed and acquired this information, and they will have assimilated it. Okay, so how do you know which galleries to approach? You're just going to turn up at your local gallery? I would I would suggest you don't. Firstly, there are bound to be quite a few galleries, unless you live somewhere very remote. There are bound to be quite a few galleries that you could potentially get to within an hour or two's drive. Which ones are you going to approach? Because not all of them will be likely to be a good fit, and you need to be approaching the galleries that are a good fit for you and for your artwork. Because if you spend a lot of time approaching the galleries that aren't, you're just going to get disheartened, and you'll waste a lot of time, and you might potentially get a bit of a reputation for being a time waster as well, because gallery owners, they talk to each other. So let's say you're producing traditional oil paintings in substantial frames of countryside scenes, rural scenes. That might go down pretty well in a Cotswold gallery that's selling similar work, hunting, shooting, fishing kind of customers. So those sorts of galleries would be a good target for you if that's the kind of work you produce. If you're producing edgy street art or stencil art or something with a strong political message or something like that, which is very in at the moment, it's unlikely that your work would be a good fit in that traditional gallery. Also, have a think about where your prices would need to be. Now, please don't turn up to a gallery saying, "Oh, I don't know, what do you think I should sell this for?" You should know this. You should have worked it out. You should have some kind of pricing structure that makes sense to somebody that doesn't know how you calculated it. So, firstly, I would suggest that your pricing should be about in the middle-ish of the price range that the galleries that you're approaching already sell, because you don't want your pieces to be way more expensive than the other work they sell, because they won't sell it. Somebody comes into the gallery, they see your piece for 1,000, somebody else's piece is for 200 or something. They're not going to buy your £1,000 piece. It's just going to look out of place. And it works the other way around as well. If your work is very, very inexpensive compared to the £1,000 paintings or the £5,000 sculptures in the gallery, then it's also going to look out of place. And also, anyway, the gallery owner is unlikely to give you wall or plinth space for your work, because they can't earn enough money from the commission that they're taking when they sell it to cover their costs. An expensive gallery in an expensive part of town, they're going to have much higher overheads than a lower price gallery out of town. So a Bond Street gallery that we used to go to, the Halcyon, where they'd have an annual Dale Chihuly exhibition, for example, their overheads are such that they will only sell work that is at least £5,000 and up to something like that, with a lot of extra zeros added on. So you want to think about that. You want your pricing to be comparable to the sorts of prices that you will see for other work in that gallery, and you want your style and presentation to be comparable as well. Otherwise your work is going to really jar in relation to the other work on the wall, and the gallery owner won't want that. The gallery owner will want their gallery to have a certain sort of style that reflects their interest in art. Gallery owners tend to select art based on what they like and what they think will sell and what will look good. Those three things really, and those, because you can't sell stuff that you don't like. That's the reason for choosing things you like. And if your work looks out of place in that gallery, they're unlikely to want to put it on the wall. So do your research. Which galleries should you be approaching that fit that kind of brief, that stylistically and financially represent work that's a bit like yours. Doesn't have to be the same as yours, but I'm saying it should be the kind of gallery that has work that your work would sit nicely alongside. Now, don't just turn up to a gallery. You might get lucky. You might call in one day with your portfolio or something, and they might be really, really quiet, and they might give you time of day. It might be down to your personal charm, and if you can exercise some personal charm, it's probably a good thing. But ask yourself, if that gallery is really, really quiet, is that a good thing? Not really. Instead, what you should do is do your reconnaissance, identify the galleries you think would be a good fit. It'll be easy to tell what kind of work they've got based on what's on their website. Visit those galleries and do a reconnaissance. Familiarise yourself with the kind of work they've got and the kind of layout. See how the work is presented. Just confirm for yourself, without speaking to the gallery owner at this stage, I would say, confirm for yourself that it's going to work, that, you know, if you turn up with good looking work, the gallery owner is likely to like what you say and what you show them. When you've done that, I would suggest get in touch via email and say, how do you like to be approached? What is the best way to come and talk to you? Don't just phone them up or turn up on spec. They might be pretty busy. They might be in the middle of a sale when you call. They might be in the middle of rehanging the gallery or something when you turn up. They might be busy with customers queuing up, and there's you looking a bit uncomfortable and making everyone else feel uncomfortable. If the gallery says, thanks for getting in touch, yes, pop in with some stuff, and I would suggest 2 o'clock or whatever, stick to that appointment, acknowledge the appointment, stick to it. Don't mess people around. Artists have, possibly unfairly, a bit of a reputation for being a bit flaky. Don't be the person that confirms that reputation. So you get yourself in front of the gallery, having approached them in the way they want. And actually, quite a few galleries have something on their website that says how they prefer to be contacted. That would be a good way to find out that information, wouldn't it? And a good thing to adhere to. So you get to the gallery. Please don't turn up with a bunch of disparate work in different frames in carrier bags. That has happened on so many occasions that I mention it specifically. Remember that body of work, the coherent, consistent, marketable body of work that we talked about? That's what you should be showing them. You don't have to bring 500 samples. 2 or 3 samples and a digital portfolio on your tablet or something like that is easily enough to help a gallery owner decide. And of course, remember, your website and your social media channels are all updated with your new work, so the gallery owner can easily see what kind of other work you've got and check that what you're presenting is representative of what you've been doing lately. Don't show the old stuff, show the newest and the best stuff that you've got. Give yourself the best chance. Find out from the gallery owner, ask lots of questions. It's a typical selling thing. The more selling you do, the less talking you end up doing, because it's all about asking questions and listening to and acting on the replies, really. Find out what the gallery owner thinks is important. Find out what their trends and what their interests and enthusiasms are. Find out what kind of artist relationships they have. Don't start asking about terms straight away. Let's find out if this is going to work first before we start talking about money, okay? So you're in front of the gallery owner, it's going well. There will be other things you'll need to do once your work is accepted. There's something particular I want to mention, and that is that make sure, well, 2 things actually. One is make sure your work is immaculately presented. Don't turn up with work that's in slightly dodgy frames that look as if they've been manhandled a bit. Possibly they have. They've been at an exhibition or a show or something like that, or you've been to several other galleries and shown them. Every time you show a piece of work, imagine it should be ready to go on to the person that actually buys it. So if the framing isn't quite right, or it's not ready, or this just needs a bit of touching up, you should have done that first. If it's not ready to hang, not ready to be bought, not ready to be enjoyed at home by the customer, it's not ready to be shown to the gallery at all. Get that sorted. Don't turn up with it all in dodgy old bits of bubble wrap. Make a proper job of making yourself some sleeves so that you can carry your work in. Okay, get used to acting like a professional artist, even if you're not, even if you don't really wish to be. Behaving like a professional artist improves your chances of getting on well with a gallery owner. Also, make sure you know what the prices are, and also, again, make sure your work is properly labelled but not dated. I'll show you an example of a label by one of the artists we work with here, Leslie Passy. So she's done a lovely little printed label on the back. It's got a picture of the actual work and information that customers will want, information that I will use to update our own stock list and put it on the website and all of that stuff. Now, thinking about websites, something I didn't say earlier is make sure you've got really good photos of your work before you do anything else. Take those photos before it's framed and glazed, if your work is going to be framed and glazed, because if you have a really good quality photo to make available to the gallery, they'll absolutely love you for it. And you can actually make a point of selling that as one of the reasons a gallery should choose your work is you're going to make it easy for people like us to promote your work, to market it, put it on the website, put it on social media channels and all that stuff, because you've already taken out some of the bit of the work that galleries actually often don't have a lot of time to do. Getting good quality photographs of glazed work without reflections, without any distortions or anything like that is quite difficult, and it takes a lot of time. If you've already done that before you had the work framed, which you're in a unique position to do, you are saving a lot of problems for a lot of people, and it will definitely benefit you in the long run. Okay, so you've got everything lined up, you know your business, you've got your work, and it's a nice body of work, and the gallery owner is pretty interested. Well, it doesn't stop there, of course. Once they accept you, once you've agreed the terms and so on, make sure there's something in writing. There should be a consignment agreement between the gallery and you, so you know the percentage that you're giving to the gallery for the sale, and you know what the terms are and how often you're going to change your work, because you are going to change your work, aren't you? If you've only got 4 pieces of work and you offer 4 of them, you've got nothing else to swap over, have you? So you'll want to be making sure that you will have further work to swap over, maybe every 2 or 3 months. Some of our artists, they call in every month. I mean, they ring us or email us to say they're going to, and they say, hey, what about these 5 things? And we say, okay, we'd quite like maybe 3 of them or 4 of them or something, and arrange to come in. And they might do that quite frequently. The more frequently gallery can change work, the easier everything is. Not too often, not every week, certainly, because a lot of our work is bought on the 2nd or the 3rd viewing, but a gallery really needs a fresh look every now and again, so that customers who came in over the summer will see something different in the autumn, and so on. You can help with that by having a body of work and being prepared and able to change that work over more frequently than some artists do. Just dumping some work at a gallery and then forgetting about it and then phoning up after a year saying, oh, you haven't sold anything. Well, there's a lot of reasons why that might have been. Probably one of those is that the work hasn't been refreshed. People have seen the same thing. Probably after 3 months to 6 months, the gallery will have taken the work down and put it in storage somewhere, because no gallery can afford for their window or their wall to look the same every time a customer visits. So there's a few pointers to help work with galleries. Now, there's a few other things here. Not all gallery owners are as nice as me. They're not all as polite. They're not all as willing to help artists in the early stages of their career. Jenny and I, who run Vitreus Art and the workshops that we do here, we are the organisers of an art trail here in Northants, and it's given us the pleasure of working with a lot of artists, some of whom are, I would consider, personal friends really, some of whom are definitely more professional than others, some of whom are just talented amateurs who don't really have any strong ambition other than to just enjoy what they're doing and maybe sell a piece of work now and again to finance making more. But certainly there are a lot of good artists out there, and we've had the pleasure of working with a lot of artists, and the majority of them actually are pretty nice people. There's something about artists that makes them a bit nice, something about artists that makes them perhaps a bit less business-like than some. I think artists who can confront that and deal with it have a bit of a commercial edge over those artists who are less organised. And also, of course, it means that just as not all artists are fabulous human beings, but most are. Not all gallery owners are fabulous human beings, but most are. There are the ones that are a bit sniffy sometimes. There are ones that are a bit resistant to new things. There are the ones who won't necessarily give you much shrift if you don't quite get everything in a line. So I would countenance being very tactful and discreet when talking about your experiences with gallery owners, because a lot of us talk to a lot of others, and it's quite easy for an artist to get a reputation as being a bit awkward or a bit fussy or not very willing to operate in a partnership with the gallery, because that is what it's all about. You help to sell the gallery and the gallery helps to sell you, and a bit of both, and there's a bit of mixing up in all of that. I will say, once you've got your work in the gallery, you should be telling people about that. This is why you need your social media channels up and running. This is why you need your own website. You need those platforms to be able to tell people, oh, I've just got my work into such and such a gallery, here's what it looks like, because you want some photos of your work on display in the gallery. There's a certain amount of kudos and credibility that attaches to that. There are other stronger reasons to want to be in a gallery, but you should exploit that. If part of your journey as an artist is selling through galleries, you should, I would suggest at least, exploit every aspect of that. You know, my work has been chosen by a gallery, really happy about that. Here's what it looks like on the wall. Make sure you go and see them. Here's their address, here's their website. You should be doing all that stuff. Just like you would promote your own open studios event or an exhibition that you're putting on with an art group in your local town or whatever, you would always promote those things. You'd always invite people to them. You should do the same with a gallery, because a gallery will benefit from that traffic, and you will benefit from that in a much warmer and more productive and mutual relationship. And you'll actually find it may not be perhaps quite such a conscious decision as I'm suggesting, but a lot of gallery owners will suggest artists to their regular customers, because they know those artists will respond with a commission opportunity, or those artists are the ones who are supportive of the gallery. You'd always put forward a friend for a job if you knew someone needed an electrician, for example. You wouldn't say, well, there are lots of electricians, I know one, but I'm not telling you who it is. You'd recommend your friend as an electrician for a job. And that's what you want your gallery owners to be doing. You want the gallery owners to be saying, hey, check out these new things from this new artist that's just come in. Have a look. We really like that person. They're very active on social media. They're doing a good job of mentioning what we're doing, and I'm doing a good job of mentioning that artist to you, Mr. Customer. That's the kind of relationship you want, a bit of mutual back scratching, and that will best be served if you take some responsibility for promoting what you're doing at the gallery, not just promoting yourself, but promoting what you're doing at the gallery as well. Okay, so that's quite a lot of me talking. I'd be interested to know what sort of questions you have. You can leave those in the comments wherever you see this, on YouTube or social or something like that. There's a lot more to this subject, frankly, and we could blather on for hours, probably days actually. I'm going to write up some notes. There'll be documented versions of all this kind of info a bit later on this year. This is 2022, by the way. So let me know what particular issues or positive experiences even that you've had with working with gallery owners. If you're a gallery owner, feel free to comment as well. If you're seeing this on YouTube, love you to subscribe, because there'll be more of this kind of stuff and you might well want to get into that. Finally, I would say, don't necessarily conflate the idea of being businesslike in your art as a means that all the joy should be stripped out of it by spreadsheets and numbers and sales and promotions and things like that. Creating art should be a joy. It should be a joy for you creating it. It should be a joy for the people selling it, and it should be a joy for the people that ultimately own it. And you probably wouldn't do it if you just had to do it for a living. Most artists who do earn a living from their art do other things outside of that as they're released from art, because a hobby that becomes a business is more a business than a hobby, really. And sometimes it's necessary to have extracurricular activities that will give you the joy that being an artist could give you, but may give you less of because you're becoming more businesslike. Don't let being businesslike put you off being artistic, but don't let being artistic stop you being businesslike. Okay, that's enough from me for this time. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.